Deal, especially, you're not a, you
Especially if you did a good cigar deal.
Bill, you good to go? Well, welcome everyone, appreciate you being here today. The second item on our agenda is approval of the minutes from the September 26, 2013 meeting. Has everybody had a chance to look at them? Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
I make a motion to approve with one change, under approval of minutes, next to the last line. Mr. Fine, there's a motion, it's in there, so
Be very enthusiastic, that's probably what it was. Okay, we have a motion, we got change. Is there a second?
Correct.
Motion and second. All in favor of approval of the minutes from the September meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great, that's a good start. Board governance, Western Highlands representation. Let me start, share a conversation I had, and an idea I have, which may not be a good idea, but I'm just gonna, what he did, look at me funny.
All right.
Okay.
We all the time.
Okay. I had a conversation with the Jackson County Manager, Chuck Wooten. His idea, he suggested that when we had our meeting a couple of weeks ago and talked about, I guess, reopening, I don't know if that's our board reconstitution ideas. When we had that meeting, that we take the 8 commissioner members and only let the different boards of commissioners vote on just those 8. Leave the 13 in place. I believe that's what his idea was. And we talked about that a little bit. And one thing I so I want to throw that out there. And if you look at it that way, the 13 members, and I've got a list. Does everybody still have their list that Michael gave us in the other week? You said you didn't have it.
I didn't review.
I mean, that's got representation from different counties. It's sort of all over the place.
Don't we have to vote on the whole slate?
We do. Here's where I was going is that, and I think what he was meaning is that all the 23 counties would vote on those. His proposal was vote on those 8 commissioner positions. The 13 would stay like they are.
You mean nominate, Rick? You mean nominate?
I'm sorry, nominate the 13 that were proposed, that Michael brought up would be brought to the board for nomination. The 8 commissioner positions would go to all the 23 counties, and they would agree or submit other names, and you take, his suggestion was you take 8 commissioners, and you vote on it that way. That way you have 8 commissioner representatives. So I don't know how you feel about that. If you take the 8 commissioner representatives, if you took 4 of those positions, which is something that we talked about doing, and for the Western Highlands folks, let them vote on 4 positions. They had 4 positions anyway. They were all county, and then have 4 for the smoking. That in essence would give you the same thing. I don't think you would have much change in our proposed representation or that we would nominate. So I'm just sort of trying to
Go ahead and finish that.
I'm just trying to sort of get something out there, because we've got to, I guess, adopt this 30 days from when the merger is approved. And the secretary hasn't signed off on it yet, right?
No, she has not.
She has not. So if our meeting is the 3rd, if we meet the 3rd Thursday in November, which we normally don't meet in
That's
November.
Thanksgiving.
No, it's not, the 3rd Thursday, 4th Thursday is Thanksgiving. But if we meet sometime in November, if we meet early, and give us time to send that information to all the counties. Again, we're talking about commissioner representatives. So what do y'all think about that?
Got a couple things. First and foremost is the fact that Michael put these people in that position or in those positions because of their knowledge of running an LME board. And with that being said, just got a call Tuesday night from Keith Elmore. And he hung on that thing in our meeting last week, when someone suggested that, you know, you guys could vote on this, or you could offer some additional nominees. He caught that, and he's interested in doing just that for whatever reason. I don't know if we want to open that can.
Well, I'm just saying, when we had our meeting, I think the way it was left, it wasn't left that we would stay where we were. I think where it was left was that there was going to be, people would be able to suggest additional names. I mean, I think that's the feeling.
I think you kind of got the idea there because Lanier brought that up.
Right.
And I don't know that we ever signed off on that or voted on that or decided that or anything.
We didn't, but I think with all the people that were there, that was sort of, I won't say everybody, I don't know if everybody agreed or not, because there was, some people weren't talking very much, but I think that's where it was left. And I would just say, if you wanted to, if that's to be the case, I don't know if you got time to go through, take 21 positions and go through that whole, like it's already been done. If you take commissioner positions, so that seemed to really be what the question was about, was the commissioner position. And Western High, you know, what was proposed and what was given to everyone was 4 from Western Highlands and 4 from Smoky. So if you're going to do that, if that's the way you do it, you let Western Highlands pick 4 and we pick 4.
We'll wind up and have people that I'm afraid, that have no knowledge whatsoever of an LME and its function.
I'm not disagreeing with
And
that.
there's 13 that we're putting on there, a lot of those don't either.
I mean, I'm just trying to get something out there, is all I'm
Yeah.
trying to do. I don't know how
I think what might happen, Rick, is, and I think the 4 is Western Highlands, and if we've got 4 out of the 15 counties,
Plus the one.
plus the 1.
Out of 13.
Right. I think what you'll see is most of the counties will substitute one of their commissioners for whoever's on that.
That's my whole point.
So-
And then we're gonna come back, and then
Yeah.
we're gonna have 14 of the 4. I'm, you know, that might be a good, I mean, I don't know how you can satisfy Mr. Elmore, but,
I mean,
we
we
try to satisfy everybody. That's the reason it's such a calm. That's the reason we had a conference call this morning with the division, and Mr. Ed, and Fred Steen, you may know him? Fred Steen is a legislative guy from the governor's office, and we talked to them. They are powwowing tonight, so we're still holding out. We don't have to do none of this. You gotta have faith. Now, so far we have, I think, 14 of the counties have submitted their resolution to talk to Mr. Tillis yesterday. He's very interested in that because he'll be running for something else. He don't want to lose him. So I think it's, in my letter to Mr. Steen, I mean, the only thing that the secretary can hang her hat on, because the precedent being set is the population threshold. That's it. You can't break the law, 21 things. But we set the precedent. Nobody didn't know that the precedent already been set. Brian can explain better than me. But the precedent has been set where they moved the population threshold. And so she don't want to set no precedent. She told me she don't want to set no precedents. And it's just, if you've not been down there, are you recording it?
Yeah.
You recording that?
Sure, I get all of it.
Anyway, it's, so there's topics ongoing. I don't know where it's at, but it's, so we'll just have to see if that does any good at all. But until she signs it, that's when the clock starts. And we talked about some contracts that apparently they've worked that out where that don't have to happen. She does not have to sign the merger to do the contract. Is that right, Brian? Don't know.
That doesn't sound right to me. There,
I've got 2 observations. One is, I talked to a number of commissioners after that meeting, and one of them in particular said if we had this meeting 2 months ago, we'd have this all, everything would be fixed now. And I wanted to say to him, but I didn't. I wanted to say, if your commissioner would show up at the meetings that we do have and participate, then we wouldn't have to be called this kind of meeting.
Right.
And I wanted to tell him what kind of attendance his commissioner had, which is very spotty, but I didn't. But what I took away from that was that there are a lot of those commissioners who really feel like they need to participate. And I talked to Chuck after that too, and Chuck felt the same. He felt like that the commissioner participation was one of the key ingredients, and that's why he was suggesting, well, let's just let the commissioners vote. But there is a way of getting around the GOM that it could produce, like Ronnie says. That's a good old mountain word, but everybody knows what it means, I guess. If you've been here long enough, you know what it means right now.
All right,
A way you could get around that would be just, put our nominations out there and say, we invite you to substitute at will. You get 2 votes, only one of whom can be from your county commission. That way, if a commission thought, you know what, I know that Ronnie Bill has spoken up, and I think we'll vote for Keith Elmore and Ronnie Bill, and that's what it comes from Wilkes County. And Watauga says, yeah, we'll vote for Nathan Miller and Ronnie Bill. And it's the same thing, and all of a sudden you've got Ronnie Bill on there because he's got more votes because you allowed each county to have 2 votes on the one of whom is from their county. That'd be a way to get to the point where you just had complete dilution and nobody had a majority of anything. So you'd have basically 23 nominations. And maybe that'd be all you'd have, and not one of them would have a majority to go into the slot. So you gotta have more voting power in order to get somebody in there with a sufficient number to be qualified.
I think at the November meeting, we have to be prepared to move forward with the new board. I think that's we gotta put something in, we gotta have a board in place to move from. And, I don't have any objection to, personally, for us to go with what Michael proposed. He gave representation. There's not gonna be any way it's gonna make, I wish there was some way to make everybody happy, but if this county's on it, this county's not gonna be happy. And honestly, this is not something new. We've been talking about this and talking about this and talking about this, and Michael took an enormous amount of time and tried to lay something out, and this committee, the executive committee with Western Highlands, we've been talking about it and talking about it. And there's always going to be a better way to do it. I'm all for, but we've got to make a decision.
Well, I will say,
doing like you're saying, Jay, is that okay? There's a tie, and we're going to do this, and there's a tie. We're doing exactly what the state's saying that will happen. We can't decide amongst ourselves. Let's just have the insurance company. I'm just saying, let them run the thing, and we don't have any kind of public management of it at all.
well, I am totally for Mike's proposal, because I think that's the best that we can do right now.
Right.
Because we really and truly pick out people who have their part in it.
I think
To
so.
serve on that board. What I was just talking about, that if we decided that we're going to go with a vote on it to give the county commissioners, that we're going to have to figure out a better way than just one vote for 23 counties. It'd be hopeful.
But before you get to that, what you gotta do is make sure it's gonna get on the agendas. That's gonna be the problem.
Well,
Getting put on
Judy had her
your
hand
agenda.
up next. Judy?
Michael done a lot of work on this, and I congratulate him, because it wasn't easy. And not just because I was one on picked to be on the board. I have told my other commissioners and any of their surrounding county commissioners, I won't be just representing Ashe County. If you're anybody that served on the regional board or on the Association of County Commissioners, you know you're representing everybody. It's not just one position. I think let's go ahead with what Michael has proposed. If you're going to go through this and let county commissioners submit names, you're going to have a group of counties getting together.
Right.
No, you're going to have them getting together and saying, okay, we're going to pick Ron Bill, or we're going to pick Judy Poe, and we're going to pick who we want to, and we're going to be deciding who goes on that board. I think this way is been better.
How do y'all feel about what she's saying?
Well, my observation was, they left with the sense that they wanted input. And they left, I left the meeting with the sense that there was gonna be some mechanism for input. Now, we had a couple of members from our board who said, oh, y'all just decide. Well, having sat in on these meetings and seen the kind of thought and work that has gone into this, I can recommend without a doubt Michael Slade. But I don't know, I think if just what I think will happen, because my thing is never get ahead of the Board of Commissioners. And I learned that very early on. I think there's some counties that won't support it or won't put it on the agenda.
I think you're right.
I think that's gonna happen
I
anyway,
believe that.
regardless of who's what slate. I think the people that might go on slate done the best you could do. But if you open it up, I think it needs to be put out there and see what happens. If you can get enough counties to put it on the agenda, that's gonna be a struggle.
Yeah.
I want to address what Ed said, and 99.9% of the time I agree with what he says, but I think in this situation, I'd point out that my county has had 3 commissioners in the last 4 years, so that they've not had the time for a learning curve. We've got another election coming up next year, we're gonna lose a bunch of commissioners because of voter apathy. The commissioners, there's such a turnover with commissioners, particularly in those far western counties, Ronnie, as you know, that I don't know of any of them, with the exception of Ronnie, that actually, well, maybe Kevin's the county manager that actually have the knowledge of how the LME runs. It's because of that learning curve that it takes, and they don't stay there long enough to learn. So I'm not real sure, Ed, how important it is to keep those 8 commissioners on there that have the knowledge of how the LME operates.
Well, actually, of the 8, 4 are county managers.
Okay, 4 of them are county managers.
Okay. Really, you're just talking about 4 commissioners, 5 total commissioners.
Well, we go through county managers like dishwater too.
Charles is not.
I feel passing going there. I'm just unfortunate, I guess.
But what happens if the board tonight took action to nominate and it doesn't make the agenda, what happens?
I guess my conclusion is I probably agree with more what you said than what Ed said, in that it would be better to let them have that kind of input.
I'm trying to, we not say at the meeting, or the idea was at least thrown out, that folks to come to this meeting tonight with any suggestions, because, am I remembering right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to do kind of what you're saying, 5, let Western Highlands have their 4, and do 5, and throw any additional names in the pot that you want. And then,
Who's going to vote?
well, I was going to say, the board is essentially recommending to the counties, and whoever's there tonight can vote on those 5, including any, let's say that you take the 5 that are already there, that we've already suggested be there. And let's say somebody throws in, I'm just going to pick names, let's say Nathan Miller, Kennedy, trying to think of.
What are the 5, Michael, you're referring to that are already there? When you say that,
Myself,
what do you mean?
Ronnie, Vicky, Judy, and Larry Cox. The 5 that we suggested already.
Okay.
So
That
we
meet
got
the
the-
13, meet one of the 13 positions, right?
No.
They're 4 of them are those at large, and then 1 is in the 13.
Correct.
So there's 5.
Right.
And let's say that, pick any name you want, but let's say there's 4 more names that are around,
Okay.
based on what people are thinking.
Okay.
Then this board votes on those 9 people to pick 5. And you could, to make sure people felt comfortable, you could pass out, paper ballots. You wanted to, make sure nobody felt undue pressure from, their commissioner representative or whatever. And then that be the group that's put out to the counties. and they voted up or down. I honestly believe the counties that are gonna bucket, no matter how you constitute it,
I think so myself.
they're gonna bucket.
I think they're probably gonna avoid even putting it on their agenda, like,
They
I
might very
think,
well.
I think 37.
that call I just took was Keith Elmore. He's on his way, and I guarantee he has something in his mind to throw in the pot tonight.
Just make a very neutral comment, okay? The board, the Smoky Board, has a certain responsibility, I think, that you've understood and you've taken on. You don't control what the counties do,
Correct.
or do or don't do.
Right.
And I don't think you can let that, you know, you have a job. to do.
Overshadow our good judgment.
Well, I don't even want to put it that way. You just, you know, you do what you're responsible to do in the way it's been interpreted. You can't control whether counties are gonna vote on it or not, or if they vote it up or they vote it down.
What happens tonight if we have some individuals, some counties, they make some, like Michael's saying, and okay, we say, okay, we have 5 positions and we have 8 names submitted and we end up with 5 people. We submit those names that were the 5 vote getters. And I guess the only people that can vote on those would be commissioners, or would it be board members? I don't know. But where I'm going with that is then that gets submitted to all the county boards, the 23 counties, and most of them don't take any action on it. So what happens then?
Well, and they would say, well, I didn't know I was supposed to come to the meeting and give you a name. I want to submit another name.
But what I know what I'm saying, if the boards of county commissioners decide they're not going to vote, they don't think that's right, they don't agree with it, sort of like we've been saying, then what happens to the new constituted board? We think it,
You want my opinion?
if yours or Jay's or.
I would say you just go ahead
Yeah,
until somebody tells you to stop.
okay. Is that,
I've got one observation though, and this was from a very brief conversation that I had with Brian. And Brian, I want you to flesh this out, because we've had, in this country, in this past 3 or 4 months, we've had an extraordinary civic lesson. And what I've taken away from that is that if you decide you want to just stop the government, you've got a way you can do that. You can just bring the government down to its knees. If you're so dedicated to one idea, there's a way of stopping it in its tracks. And that, I think, parallels exactly where we are in mental health. Because we're so insistent on making sure those county commissioners get what they want, we can turn off the spigot for mental health care across the region. And the way it happens is that, and Brian, I want you to explain this. I want you to explain the government shutdown of mental health, how that will happen when the secretary says to Medicaid at the federal level, well, we don't have our act together yet, and the federal level says, well, you don't have any money then. And then we have to turn around and tell the providers, sorry, you're on furlough. Tell them how that actually would work.
And then those county commissioners will get calls they really don't want.
Yeah, tell us the mechanics, because I bet you that not one commissioner out of the whole bunch does not left knowing that they're talking about government shutdown.
Well, I think
This is something that needs to be brought up tonight.
It
You
does.
You say that in other words, too.
It does, because that's what we're talking about.
I think what we have to do.
And Brian doesn't want to get in the middle of it today at this meeting, but I think you ought to get in the middle of it right now and explain to us at this level what's actually at stake here.
Here's what's at stake. These things bring the worst out in people. It does not bring the best out. It brings the worst out. And, you know, I've seen a lot of email traffic that is very disturbing. When counties are pitted against other counties, there is no good that comes of it. None. Absolutely none. And what I worry about is that Smoky Mountain Center and our work gets kind of held hostage to that. Okay? There's such important things we need to be dealing with, that for this to absorb so much energy and so much distraction, so much conflict. Now you have counties saying, oh, there's no accountability over the money. Oh, maybe we don't want to give Smoky the money. The rippling of it which is kind of how I will express the, your request to talk about how this goes. The rippling of this just gets bad to worse to worse to worse, okay? What I would tell you is the state needs us to be strong. There's going to be one leader in the West. If you think it's a done deal that it's smoky, forget it, okay? Forget it, because it isn't. It's up to us to make that happen. So by weakening ourselves with this, how does that work? And I know this isn't about smoking, but it is about smoking. Okay, see, that's the
It
problem.
is definitely about smoking.
But
So
that's-
how
Speak to that.
I need the help of a board.
Yes, you do.
I do, and smoking needs the help of a board. Okay?
That's why
All
I
right,
think.
now, since you've opened that can of worms, may I speak to this? I know for a fact some of the conversations that's going on between Brian, Center Point partners. This kind of unsettled turmoil that we are dealing with right here does not play well through Brian to these people. Because each one of those two, they think they're going to be in charge. Right now they do. That's just the way it is. Brian thinks he's going to be
You
in
gotta
charge.
know why, because Rickman
Taylor
thinks
thinks
the
he's
rock
going
in
to be
the
in
water.
charge.
The rock in the water is legislation.
It is.
The rock in the water.
That's right.
So you can talk about smoking and having wringing hands, and we may lose no head. I don't believe that for 1 minute. Not for 1 second do I believe that. And I think it's bad legislation, and if you want elected officials, because it blows up, it comes back home. It don't come to Smoky Mountain, it comes to the county commission. That's what it always does. That's the reason my phone rung this morning at 3 o'clock. You know, when something goes wrong, it comes back to the county commission. It always does, and always will. So it's about the governance thing, the reason it's so important. It ain't just a game. If y'all think it's just a game, it's not a game. I mean, this is a big deal.
What if, however, Medicaid says we're just not writing you a check?
Well, that's Medicaid problem. That's not,
But let's say we get a lot of money from Medicaid and we don't have that.
I tell them to call governor or call Duke Fire, whoever, wherever he's at. So, you know, what's with the legislation? It's a legislative problem, it's not a smoking problem.
I don't think the federal government cares about local commissioners. I think that what they're interested in is do we go through with this contract with you? Yes or no? If the secretary says, well, not smoky because they don't have a government board yet. So I guess we'll just do it with somebody else. How can we got contracts with the fires that we can't pay? What do we do then? You talk about phone calls then.
I'd call, get Nelson Daughter on the speed dial, is what I'd do.
That's not going to get any instant.
The cowboy stuff is not going to work. I'm sorry, that's cowboy diplomacy, and it's not going to work. You know, if the legislature were in session, it might work, but not at this stage of the game. And I think what we have to do is do what we were put on this board to do, vote it up or down as a recommendation to the counties, let the counties do what they're going to do, and if it doesn't pan out, we deal with that then. I believe that in the end, there will be enough people who say, I respect the rule of law, I want to do what we're supposed to do, which is to focus our energy on the clients, not on disrespecting the law because you don't like it. And we have to stand up and do what's right for Smokey and the clients and quit the cowboy stuff. That's my opinion.
And we won't, we won't have a public entity if we can't pull this off.
That's right.
This will be a private enterprise, and I have a lot more faith myself in a public presence in the delivery of services in our region.
But can this scenario actually play out? Because doesn't the secretary have the authority to appoint the board if we don't?
That's exactly
So it
right.
really won't play out, right?
That's right.
And what you'll get is a board that you don't have any control over instead of one that.
I think perhaps the Smoky does its part, and falls apart out here in the hinterlands,
Right.
that still gets presented to the secretary. and
That's
you
right.
Say, I believe you all did your own work, and this is the board that I appointed.
That's entirely possible.
I'm not there
Well, sure.
tonight, but I know how much thought and effort and consideration went into this. And Michael, I sat back in awe of all of the factors that you put into play coming up with this. So Yancey County doesn't have a representative, I've got Chuck's number. He'll take care of Yancey County, I know he will.
Well, and I totally agree. I think there's two things we do tonight, one of two. And that's either vote up or down what we've already recommended, or we do that modified option, which is, say, here are 5 positions. You got any other names, vote that, and then,
That's what
and
we do.
that's what we recommend
To all
to
the
the counties. Like you say, I think the secretary may very well say, I'm not gonna let it, well, anyway.
No, finish your thought, Mike, I want to hear your thought. Finish your thought. No, let the secretary what?
I don't think,
Go on,
I think she wants it to work.
I
If she
think
wants it to work and we want it to work, what else can we do? Except drag it out for another 6 or 8 months, you don't have to.
So how do y'all feel about tonight? We bring this up tonight, that way you want to do it A, as it is, or B, get the other nominations from the floor, and then vote on those 5 positions.
Well, if you use the A, as it is, let's sell, once again, try to sell the rotation process, the 1 year, 2 year, 3 year process that we're putting in there also. These people will have, within a year, there'll be positions open.
Yeah, I think this is I think whatever's done is an interim or temporary because it's
I
not
totally agree.
within a year.
I totally agree.
This is a step in this bigger process.
No, I'm talking about in our rotation process. In our initial appointing right here, we've said you will serve 1 year, 2 years, 3 years.
But I'm saying that.
I wouldn't go into this other thing.
That's right. But in reality, it really won't matter because we'll change again.
It's probably right, but that's a selling point for tonight.
How do y'all think? A or B?
Michael has the list, if he wants to review who's on the list.
Will you do that? You mind doing that?
That's fine. You want to do it now?
Yeah, let's do it now. Let's talk about it if we need to.
Okay. Well, the board attorney, Carolyn Coward, recommended a 3-year term. You need a stability person with health care experience as attorney, not just attorney off the street that's done real estate or criminal stuff or whatever. You need healthcare experience and stability. CPAC, that's not our choice. That's the CPAC choice. We originally had Dan Lane, Nancy Baker, Pat McGinnis. My understanding is that they switched Pat McGinnis and Dan Lane. Is that correct?
But they've gotten it settled, so.
Okay. And then Ed Tarleton, who's both the Council of Community Programs chair as well as past chair of this board, and that being a 2-year term, kind of the intermediate phase. Cross-county positions would be Dr. Jeff Heck, May had a 3-year term, and Craig Sappenfield of the County Commissioners Association. Now, he lives in our jurisdiction, even though he's with NCACC, and his experience is in risk management, the insurance people. They do the pools for the County Commissioners Association. Because remember that wording says insurance with the scale and scope of an MCO. Doesn't say, somebody selling insurance in the county. No disrespect intended here, but this fits the position more clearly. The LME Provider Council, again, that's not our choice, that's the choice of the Provider Council, and currently I think that's Duncan Sutton.
Correct.
And I put 1-year term there simply because they may very well, of their own choosing, choose to rotate that, because we've got a huge number of providers. Hospital administrator, we put Casey Cooper's name in contention there with the Quality Boundary as a 1-year term. And remember, both the LME Provider Council and the hospital administrator are non-voting positions by that
Isn't it
statute.
Sean Patrick Casey?
Yeah.
He was contacted before we even started, it's my understanding, to tell him that his name would likely be thrown in
I
contention. Is that
did
right?
tell him that that was a very high likelihood.
When you say you're good?
I haven't circled back with him to say it because it's been so up and down. I don't want to say really anything until you're ready.
Then, there's DSS director position, Joyce Edwards from Caldwell County is recommended there, one-year term. And part of the logic is that if you rotate these, all 23 counties have a DSS director. You could easily rotate that one annually, and do it maybe by region or whatever. And one time it's from Central, one time it's from Northern, one time it's from Western. MHDDSA experience, Maggie Faulkner, who is a provider, South Trump, Martin, somewhere in that area, if I remember right, 2-year term. And so then that left the 8 positions that, excuse me, say, oh, no, sorry. Rick French, the finance position. I mean, every county manager in our jurisdiction has finance experience. And Rick's good at it. He's second tightest in Western North Carolina. Our county manager takes that position. Whatever you want to call it. And then there's one county commissioner position that's in that 13. My name was thrown in there. I told Rick, and I said it at the last meeting or two, I'll say it again, I'll be happy to take my name out of contention if it makes this thing work. If having, one of those go to somebody else, so be it. And that leaves 4 for Western Highlands, Mandy Stone, Steve White, Chuck Bynes, Carl Clausen. Actually, was Steve the one that said?
Steve was going to be replaced with Marsh Pittman out of Polk County.
Yeah, thank you. Mark Pittman out of which county?
Polk County. Because Artie believes he's going to retire in the springtime.
So Steve is out or Steve is in still?
He's not out.
Oh, he's out. Just say him again.
No. Marsh replaced Artie Wilson because Artie thinks he's going to retire in the spring. So it should be Marsh Pittman, Steve Wyatt, Mandy Stone, and myself.
Right, okay.
Not Carl Clausen.
That's where I'm going to get to. Steve Wyatt coming out and Carl Clausen going in.
Okay.
So Steve going out.
So Carl would not be in the first quarter.
So you've got Marsh Pittman, Mandy Stone, Carl Clausen, Charles Fine.
That'd be, still be 5.
Marsh, Chuck, Carl.
Who you picking out? Line through Artie and Steve.
Steve Wyatt out.
Okay.
No.
Okay, gotcha. Sorry.
You got Marsh, just say him again, just to make sure.
Mandy, Marsh, Chuck, and Carl.
Yes.
Okay. So then on the Smoky side, it's Vicki Green from Jackson, Ronnie Bill from Macon, Larry Cox from Allegheny, Judy Poe from Hatch. And what that gives you essentially is 2 from Western, 2 from Northern. The Central doesn't have 2 at-large, but if indeed it were Rick and I on the 13, then we would still have 2 from the Central, and then that would round that out. It also gives you, of course it's disproportionately male, but it also gives you Vicki, Judy, and Mandy as females, if you're considering that at all. So that's basically
Pretty strong.
what.
So those are pretty strong right there.
So that's how it would be constituted if we voted it that way, but again, if we do the B option, that could change.
So tonight, for example, just thought, is that was made, that was the recommendation, what I just read, and somebody said, I'd like to make another nomination. Would Commissioner, would you let to do that, or you pass, Michael, have an idea of passing out a piece of paper and let them write down names? I mean, I don't, you know, you said your works representative is coming up here, I'm sure.
I'm sure he's coming with something on it
Right.
that he wants to do. I have no idea what it is.
My thought is you let the whole board, because this isn't, you know, in the old legislation, the county commissioners nominated and voted to constitute that board. But in this case, we're not constituting the board.
Right.
We're making a recommendation
You're
to the
nominating,
counties.
right, right.
And so to
Okay.
me, it's a board decision, we let everybody do it. The only reason I,
The county commissioners can vote.
No, he just
when
said-
it goes out to the
No, no, I'm
counties.
talking about tonight.
Well, that's what I was saying, is that, to me, it should be everybody, simply because we're not constituting a board. In the old way of doing things, when the county commissioners voted, you were constituting a board. We're not. We're simply making a recommendation to the counties
So let them,
to let them do it. And so to me, everybody should. And my only thought about doing it by paper ballot is so that, you know, let's say, I don't even remember who's the at-large from Macon?
Dorothy.
Dorothy. Let's say Dorothy feels differently than Ronnie about how this goes, so that she doesn't feel any undue pressure from Ronnie, or so that Helen Alverson from McDowell doesn't feel any undue pressure from me. You know, that's why I thought, think about it. That's just my thought.
Just, we might also say, give the opportunity to say, are there nominations from the floor?
Well, that's the B option that
That's
it's
what,
talking
that's what we're
about.
talking about.
Yeah. I just didn't hear that. If we put this out there and say, this is our recommendation, now we're going to open this up to the commissioners that are here on the nominations from the floor, then if everybody agreed to nominate one person, it'd be on the ballot. Right?
yes, sir.
Yes, if I still don't, just in my opinion, I don't think it should be just the commissioners. When the commissioners
No, I mean
do-
the whole board. I agree. I think it's a whole board making that decision.
When you're talking about that, you're saying nominations for any of the 21, right? You're not differentiating between the county commissioner ones or the other ones.
I'm suggesting that not because it's my preference, but I'm suggesting that that would be appropriate based on the conversation that we had last week, or week before last, is that there was, the idea was, we're going to get to have a say in this. So we're saying, have your say. I don't think they're going to figure out who would be a better hospital administrator than Casey Cooper. I just don't see that coming.
I mean, I'm just trying to clarify so that when you get in there, you know what you're
Right.
dealing with.
Right. That's what I'm
Are
trying.
are you trying to limit it,
I really think every can of worms is going to be open.
you know,
Well, I know, but I was just talking, I mean, just so over here.
are we, is the deal, I can use that word to say that the 13, they're set?
Well,
We're only gonna consider other choices for the 4 or the 8.
So the not for the Western Highlands.
Right. So just for the 4.
If there are other nominations. And then if there's one nomination, then would you just pass out paper ballots and then let people vote on the preference of four people?
And you can look at that, again, you can look at that as a responsibility that the Smoky Board has to do what they have to do. And whatever anybody else does, whatever anybody else does. And that's kind of how we're trying to chunk this.
So you come out of it with the slate, and then that goes out.
And whatever happens to that, happens to that.
And can our proxy vote that too, correct?
Tonight, I think so, because I think you're just recommending
sure.
to the full board. And then at the November meeting, we adopt it or whatever. We would reconstitute the board.
And
Right?
We need to come back and vote a second time.
And I'm saying, tonight we'll do this. We're sending this to the counties.
Right.
so what
Okay,
you
so
want
at
to
the
do,
November meeting, do we need to do anything else? Or do
your goal is to end up with a slate tonight.
Yeah.
Send that out.
Right.
So you send out to counties, okay?
If they
And the
want to
counties
change
have
it,
participated, two not.
I do think we need to include in that, take out of that 13, the county commissioner slot. And that's a valid, in other words, instead of it being 4, it'd be
I
5.
see.
The only potential pitfall I see to that is you lose all of your legacy experience.
That's right, I agree.
So,
I'd say
what
give
people-
Michael in.
that's
That's
why,
what people aren't gonna appreciate.
And that's where I think the responsibility of this board lies, right there.
Right.
I put her out there and let her vote her up or down.
I think we need to keep Michael on that. Just
Keep
keep
Michael on there, and put her out there and say,
Yeah.
this is what, because we all agree that, we didn't vote on this.
We voted on this thing already.
yes,
And, I mean, you can always come back and change somebody can come back and throw a wrench in, let them do that at the county level. Our county probably will.
Either way, I'm just
Yeah,
trying,
but if you're wearing your smoky hat, you're doing what you need to do for the smoky board.
That's right.
That's how I look.
I just put it out there, this is what the transition team has come up with, that is the voice for this board, and
I agree
Here's
with you,
your slide.
then we can move from there then.
it might not be appease everybody, and it won't.
So you're saying we won't ask for nomination from the board?
I would, I'd say that if you don't agree with who's on the slate, then you can vote it down. You will have an opportunity to county level, do whatever you want.
I don't think
Here's what the
anybody on this
transition
board
team does.
ever implied that. Lanier implied it.
I don't know if
I'll
we're
go
gonna
with
write
that can of
that.
worms.
Well, whatever we do tonight, I think it ought to be a recommendation that we agree on right now.
That's what I was trying to do.
yeah, I think my sense is folks left the meeting we had a week or so ago in the evening with the sense that they would have input. And that's input if you open nominations from the floor for those limited.
I'm not sure everybody went away with that same. Some of them did, but I'm not sure everybody went away with that.
Okay.
Part of the struggle is the extent to which counties see their commissioner participant, and you can say that the manager participant. I'm going to concentrate on the smoky part, whether or not that counts enough
As input.
in the board, that the activity of the commissioner on the smoky board doing what they do, does that really mean county participation or not? Does that count for the county commissioners? And we struggled with that one. That's been a
That's been
long.
ongoing for eons.
So, not to, I know we need to get somewhere with this, we've got other items to talk about, we're almost at not far from 2:30. So where do we want to leave this? Do we want to just, at the meeting?
You want a motion?
I don't think so, I mean, I just think the meeting tonight, is it would the consensus be that somebody makes a recommendation that the board?
I make a motion that you ask for an up or down vote on what we have proposed.
Okay, would you want, okay, is there a second to that motion?
And I'm sorry.
I was talking.
Jay?
What did you say?
I make a motion that we place before our board tonight the suggested transition teams list of board members, and we ask for an up or down vote.
Second.
Okay, Judy seconds, okay, we got 2 seconds. Mayor third. Okay, before we go on, just to be sure, do we want Michael to review the names for everybody that's here tonight, just to go over them one more time?
I think the names, I think what's going to be important is how it's framed and who speaks before it's ever put before that board tonight. That's what's going to be important.
Okay,
let me ask you this, do you think that my presentation is a hindrance? Would you rather somebody else?
no, I do not, I think you explained very well, Michael.
I think you do.
I don't think you need to, that you don't have to explain why it's been recommended. I mean, it's worked for us, but I'm not sure all of us would understand what.
I would not mention nothing about time constraints. That we're under the gun to do
Yeah.
this. I wouldn't mention nothing about that. I would just simply state Ed's motion, the transition team has worked diligently on this. Some of us ain't done nothing, you've done it all.
Y'all are slated, making my.
And here's a slate that
Alone, it's really,
and you can talk to each one of these members that the county commissioners, I believe you'll find out that they're gonna be representing more than just their county.
So,
I think that's fair to say.
so you're fine with presenting the names, Michael?
Sure.
When we start.
I just want to make sure, because of what he said, I want to make sure that,
But I think how it's presented, and for the Elmores of the world and others that are coming with the intention, and then if it don't get on the agenda, we can't help that.
There you go.
That's not our deal.
I called the question.
well, let me,
You can work it out with him, whatever he wants to do.
Okay.
can I just ask one question on the motion? So what happens if that fails? We're going to go to Plan B? I mean, I can live with that. I think some people are coming expecting to have some input. You know, but if you're going, but if it got voted down, then you can always.
I don't want that part of my motion, I'll let the chairman decide at that point what he wants to do. My
Can't
motion
somebody, so, I mean, you know how boards work. Somebody can ask for, make a motion to have a nomination from the floor. Right? And if they get a second, and it's approved, then they can do that. I mean, you know, everything can't be, you know, perfectly probably figured out. You gotta kind of go with it.
That's what Michael does. And there's some comments made, there's a motion made in a second. If it gets voted down, we'll go do whatever we gotta do. We'll figure it out. Okay, all in favor of Ed's motion, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
I'm gonna vote, I'm gonna go on record voting no.
Okay.
Don't sell yourself short. I think there were some very good principles that were used in the process that you could speak to, Michael.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. There was a lot of good judgment used in this that people may not appreciate, that there's issues in terms of continuity, representation,
Interest.
That's the only part that I know those nominated from the floor, perhaps, not all of them, but perhaps there's some that might be nominated, don't know Michael Lavender. They don't know the blood, sweat, and tears he's put into this.
You know, that's why you
And
got to
even
trust
the
your
they don't know the
committees.
ramifications of meetings we've had over the very same thing.
Okay. We're ready to move on to the next item?
Yep.
Next on our agenda, the Western Highlands Board members stipend travel reimbursement. Who do I call on for that?
Let's call on Jill for that.
Yeah, Jill, come on, Jill. I don't have mine.
With the consolidation, the Western Highlands board members have been paid for their participation in their board meetings, and
Can we get back to that?
after the consolidations, Becky wants to do the right thing and continue that reimbursement. So I've talked with the finance department, Lisa gave her blessing, sent out, folks should have received the 5 appropriate forms that you have to fill out to get your $50 stipend and your travel, et cetera. So just wanted to mention that as a matter of record and clarification. If you have any questions, always call travel reimbursement as well.
So we get $50 for the meeting then?
Not.
No. You're supposed to.
Huh?
You're supposed to.
Yeah. Hasn't there always been a stipend for smoking board
There-
members?
there-
I've never seen it.
Yes, you have.
That was my question, I think, just, I assume this came from the stuff y'all did on closing everything out, but if the smoky board's not.
We are. We are.
No, they do, they do, he's teasing.
They're just messing with
He's
it.
teasing, he wants me to.
No, so we're just making everything the same.
Let's
All
just
right,
take
we're
Ron,
just-
take
Just
Ron.
making everything the
making
same.
everything-
Ron's not used to getting, just divide his up, all of them, and
Yeah.
give it to everybody else.
That's right.
We're just giving you
So
the
just
same.
don't listen to him, except every other
Just giving you
time.
the same
He likes
benefit.
messing- he likes messing with people, so. Okay, everybody's fine with that? We don't need a motion on that, do we? No, okay.
Informational.
Okay, the next item is regionalization. Brian?
We gave you a handout, and you can see it's got draft written all over it, because it hasn't been approved by everybody, but it gives a good kind of synopsis. And I would just ask that you don't, give it out. But of course, all this is sensitive, but this is pretty straightforward in terms of what the plan is. And I'll give you a minute to look at it, and then we can talk about it. Pretty, on the surface, pretty simple.
Based on conversation the last meeting, my understanding is you all have already begun phase one.
Right.
And can you remind me where, which areas that you all have begun to talk about as being?
Yeah. Okay, it is mental health and substance abuse care coordination, transitions to community living, and I guess that's there's a plan to create a group to do that. And then, the other language we used to use that was the DOJ settlement, but that's been, the words have changed for that. Information systems, provider network, customer services, which is our call center. We could say hospital group. It encompasses a range of activities that have to do with both the contracts with hospitals and business processes with hospitals. Probably a little bit of the emergency department stuff too. Clinical operations, IDD care coordination. So that's separate but related to the MHSA coordination. And that's it. Those are the topical areas.
And you identify which ones that you think Smokey would be a leader in?
No. The effort at this point is to look at, it's kind of the low-hanging fruit phase. Let's find the things where it's really kind of a range of things you do with this stuff. If somebody just got a way better way of doing this, and can it get adopted by the others? If somebody got a way better way of doing this and it ain't even worth it for the other two to do it, we ought to just pick one to do it. We're getting close on that with some of the, I'll give you an example, credentialing. And it actually goes back to Western Highlands, had a good process for doing that. Others are doing it. If you took a vote today, everybody would say, you know what, we ought to just have, Smokey do the process that Western established for this. We'll pay you to do it, because we can't do it as well and it doesn't make any sense. So there's a couple of things like that popping up, but that's not the predominant action. It's more, it's a discovery phase. How are people doing what they're doing? Are there better ways to do it? And what are they? And then what does that say about who should do it? How can it be done, and who should be doing it? That's what always kind of begs as you get deeper into this. And in some cases, until there's a consolidated organization, this is just like what we went through with Western. There were some things right off the bat, we just finance and IT, we just merged them together just as fast as we could. Other things, we took time to go and kind of blend them and come to an agreement about how we were gonna do things. So this is like that. The big difference is that there's not an established leader. It's very challenging to go through this process without some kind of understanding that at the end of the day, somebody's gonna be in charge. I don't know how else to put it.
Brian, make sure the Centerpoint operate, they got the waiver, correct?
Correct.
Are they in full implementation of the waiver?
Yes. They, we have come on at different times. We've been doing it the longest. I mean, I can give you some contrast on the popular things that people think about. We've been doing it, I guess 6 months, or let's see, did they go in February? I guess 7 months longer than anybody else in this group. We're larger in terms of number of counties. We're larger in terms of general population. We're larger in terms of Medicaid eligible population. And again, if you read what, one of the bullets there, how important size is in this matter. So those are the things that kind of differentiate us. So is there a process for deciding who gets to be in the lead? That's what Tara and Lanier have tried to help us with to some degree.
But they struggled. Yes, they did. I mean, I can answer that for you. And Rockingham County wanted to be so does all that put back together is what I'm asking?
Yes,
You know that?
yes. It is, pride is a powerful factor in life. And it can sometimes hinder your good judgment.
It don't hurt when the senator, the speaker, the senator represents Rockingham. That's his county. He was very much involved in that whole deal, so I didn't know if it ever got, we heard that at a meeting in Raleigh. We don't know if it ever, so it's got put back together, that's the main thing.
Yeah, there's, everybody is proud of their accomplishments and thinks they have a lot to offer.
And they might.
And, I guess the other important factor you could say, well, let's look, who's done something this big before? Partners talks about the merger they had of their 3 area programs. Okay. Centerpoint had Rockingham come in. And we've done this 3 times. And the 3rd time, nobody's done what we've done with Western.
Is David Swan, is he there? Is he the director there?
No. He's the clinical director for, it's called Partners Behavioral Health Management. Rhett Melton became the CEO. And he was from Catholics. So, there's been a meeting put together of the CEOs for next week where we are supposed to begin having more in-depth discussions about leadership. And then there's interest on behalf of, I know Centerpoint has promoted kind of a CEO board come together.
I think Centerpoint's having a meeting this afternoon about this.
We've kind of talked about this, before. There's a lot to go into here. I spoke with Dave Richard this morning about this and some other things, and part of the challenge, of course, is, well, there's no less belief that we have to get down to 4. Okay, and the map, I can show you a map with 4 colors on it. And the goal is for the Pinehurst Conference, for the secretary to be able to hold up a map and say, this is what we're going to do. Now, what does that mean exactly? That's coming right up, first week of December. This is what I explained to Dave, you know, already the conversations we're getting into about scaling IT and certain functionalities that we all need. And we can all go buy them ourselves and spend a lot of money, or we could just decide we're just going to buy it once to suit all of us. Well, you know, how soon do you want to go down that road? You know, how secure is all of this? And the way I put it to Dave is, you know, you got to tell me how good this has to be by when for it to be good enough, you know, for the secretary, for us to be, you know, kind of written into the plan. And that's the second time we had that conversation. He understands that and appreciates that, you know, there has to be a little more certainty, a little more framework put around this. Because these are going to be very, very difficult conversations for the organizations, for counties. You know, there's some of the LMEs have some of their counties split up. Yeah, that could happen. You know, this is not going to be anything easy about this. And
That
it's,
has to be done with the secretary's approval.
yep. Yep. Well, all mergers, I mean, it's just like what we've done. Mergers have to be approved ultimately by the secretary. So, we're going into a phase now that is quite something. We're going to continue our best efforts at making this work out. I would say over the years we've been good partners and generous. Would generous be the word? We've shared pretty well with these other folks. You know, we were the first ones to go live on Alpha. We were the original investors in that company to build that product and do it. And a lot of people followed after us. You know, we pretty much spit blood for a long time, you know, dealing with the initiation of that product, you know, to everyone else's benefit. You like to have those things count for something. You know, at least I do. We've worked very hard to get to where we are, and if you were sitting in a board meeting in some of those other places, they're saying the same thing. You know, how hard they work to get to where they are and how much they bring to the table. So,
But as far as counties, the way, what I've heard, if everything goes as per plan, we will be the LED with the most counties in the state, by several counties. And,
you talk with the whole western conglomeration,
the
that's
whole thing
35
will give us 35 counties.
That's a lot.
And the other one, I think that anything close to that's 26.
Well, I could count, we could count on the map.
So I see them listed under the covers. Out with the state of New York.
Well, you know, it's interesting, that's, boy, I don't even know I want to say this, but,
Yeah, go ahead, sure.
Yeah.
well, that changes things over there.
Please, you can't make that.
Mr. Chairman, Brian alluded to the conference or the forum that's being held this fall down at Pinehurst. I would beg each and every one of you, and the rest of the members of our board for that matter, to make your plans to maybe attend that. It's December the 11th through 13th at Pinehurst. I can give you the particulars on it that you think you want. But on the 12th, the Total Care Solutions of Michigan and Mark Potts, our resident board expert from the U.S. School of Government, will lead that session. So it'll be a great conference this year. You will find a lot of information there that you won't hear anywhere else. Jill can get you a copy of the whole program. She has it. She'll make your reservation for you all.
Okay.
We need to think about how to approach this as a board. We're doing a lot of work internally. And whether we need, maybe want to use this transition group for that. You know, somehow there has to be a group of board members who are going to work with the staff on this initiative in a very concerted way.
When's those dates again, Edward?
Love the program.
So we got a meeting on the 12th, right?
Yeah.
The LMA's meeting on the 12th,
When is our meeting is when?
December 12th.
December 12th.
December 12th.
Here, this meeting.
And the Pinehurst meeting's 11th through the 13th?
Yeah.
That's just gonna work.
This is what we've always said.
Okay.
I know that
Well, we moved that meeting in December, what we did, we moved it up to the second week, which we always do, so.
Well, that's the next thing we got on here. But before I leave this, I just, for what it's worth, and you know, these things get a little bit fluid, but I think there may be a request of each of the MCOs to come up with your list of non-negotiables. So that's how serious, you know, this is getting, and the kind of phase we're getting to.
And the thing about it was, and I'm not gonna think it's gonna happen, that's one of the reasons that all this other previous conversation don't matter. It will not have enough, you know, when the population exceeds, none of that matters.
But we have to deal with the laws that's spelled out right now.
Yeah, but I mean,
That's just the fun of doing it.
this will be sooner than later, I'll bet you $1 on that.
So, you know, be thinking as a board, you know, I got my part of this that I can do. We've always, you know, dealt with one another very well on this stuff, and no reason to think we wouldn't with this, but, you know, this is big stuff. And again, I just, for the sake of the understanding, you know, while we're very proud of what we've done, and I think our track record speaks for itself, nobody's anointed anyone.
But as long as you got people like Chuck Pines and people like that to work with them, you know, nothing's guaranteed.
How much did you owe you, Chuck?
That's a fact. But they were putting in, Western Highlands putting in a position of have to.
Right.
These folks are not have to.
Well, it's a different kind of have to.
They may be a have to, but.
Yeah, I think one of the things that speaks for your board and management is, we didn't come to the table as equals, but we've been treated as equals.
Well-
We really did, we were, I've never felt, a step down in this process.
Well, that's how it should be. And I can't, it's one thing for me to state that when I come to these meetings, but that's why it's so important for you guys to be able to say that.
And that way since day one.
I very much would want to have, you know, Western folks to be able to speak about this process that I think says a lot about how we do business. So be thinking about what you can't live with.
Do you need this board,
I'd phrase that another way, but
do you need this board to be able to meet with you and talk about?
That's what I'm saying. I mean, we got, I mean, it's just like other big things we've taken on. You know, can this be something we talk about, you know, with 30-some people? Of course it will be, but it's just the sensitivity and need to work at a very high level and sometimes get into some very touchy details. It's going to take a, you know, smaller group.
and they want to, you can just spell it out too, they want a reduction in force too. They want to see a reduction, a significant reduction in people. That's just a fact. And so, you know, that's one concession, I don't think nobody at this table wants to see this group out. I mean, I don't, certainly not. So that's part of the equation.
I will say that the experience we've had with Western is an opportunity to educate folks a lot about what it takes to do this. There's a lot of magical thinking, I'll just say that, about how you do this and what's involved with it and how much it costs and how long it takes. And it's like a lot of things in life. you don't always have to have done everything to have an appreciation for it, but people grossly underestimate the complexity of doing like what we've done with Western. That much I can tell you.
And what makes it even better in a way, there's nobody in the state that knows what's going on.
Right.
That's what, I mean,
That
that
Nobody
sounds
asks for advice
stupid,
and will
that
say-
sounds stupid, but that's true.
Yeah, you're
Well,
right.
that's the frosting on the cake right there.
And the thing is, communication is key to every bit of it. We feel like that we were not communicating the way that we should have been beforehand, but the communication that's been with Brian and his staff since day one has been perfect. It's been there, got more information since they've been there than we've ever received.
It all
I
comes
think
down
a lot
to
of
people,
folks
Joe.
listen to us.
Comes down to people.
Absolutely, it does.
So the action that you would want from the board tonight might be, for example, to vote to have maybe this executive committee serve as a work group for this phase, and then from this group to start thinking about those non-negotiables. And we're just sitting here, I can't think of one, and it's a cocky one. And I really believe that we need to be the legal organization, and that's the one that occurs to me. I can't.
Brian, can I ask a stupid question? And I wonder about this, me and Johnny Farmer, you know Johnny Farmer? Anybody around the table know Johnny? Everybody know Johnny? I know we do. We've had this conversation a lot, talked to him last night.
He's not on their board anymore, though, right? Right, okay.
He still runs the show.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you have the staff, I mean, I know you and Christine,
Mhm.
and then where does it go from there? I'm just a question, Brian, because when you're gonna have to have, you can't do it all, Christine certainly can't do all this. Do you bring some of their folks and some Western Highlands that you have and?
Same
so
way
you can?
Same way we've done it with Western. You know, we've got folks from Western in lead positions, we've blended folks together.
We find it to be like a sheriff's office. You got the sheriff and you got the chief deputies and, you know.
The scaling gets different, you know, and that's something that, you know, honestly, I want to say it's an experiment. I think we've made good decisions in the way we've organized things. I mean, it makes sense, seems to work, and over time, we'll refine it. But, you know, this would be another episode of that. You know, it would have to become much more, well, obviously decentralized, and that's a huge amount of territory. You know, and how do you organize it? I mean, I think I understand kind of the functions, you know, and again, this is back to a conversation, you know, what I would say, I would guarantee, okay, for my part in this is that we keep the good things that are good about what we do, the localness and the connectedness that we have in the communities, we're going to still do that, okay? There's other things, sort of doesn't matter where they're done. They have to get done right. They have to be connected to these other parts, but that's more of the backroom stuff. You know, that
What
could
is
be
so
more
different,
central office.
Chuck knows a lot of these folks and Rick does too. But if you visit these counties, once you get, and I'm not saying that, but from about McDowell going east, it really changes. It does. Yes, it does too. It does. I mean, you find you talk about mental health, you get some of these communities and the boards don't.
Does the same thing going west too.
But they don't have much look. I mean, they don't, it's totally, but when you get out of the mountains, I guess it's just me maybe, but maybe I'm different, I don't know. But it is different, it's a different folks, different personalities.
Well, you're right, whatever the criteria is, if you're gonna have a area that big, there's gonna be maybe more differences than things alike. I mean, with Western, I think that's one of the things that made it easier for us, is we have so much in common, I mean, just up and down. But this is that's a lot of territory.
This is really venturing out into the flatlands here.
You don't want to.
So, So yes, Michael.
I think the other thing that would be helpful to me anyway is for staff to maybe give us a, don't need a lengthy thing, but maybe in front of a page with some assessment of what you see our strengths versus weaknesses be.
We're working on that.
Because I think that's the key part of that negotiation. You know, what are you willing to give up? Because you know you're not that good at it. Why do you really think you need to stick for it? Because you couldn't stand working in an organization that had a worse IT system, whatever, you know.
Okay.
Be good to me.
Okay, you know, there is one other thing, and I mean, so if it's this group or something, just, gotta have somebody to work with. You just snuck this in, especially for the Western folks here, you know, probably the most major change we made on the provider side of things at Western counties in terms of contract and network development kind of system stuff with mobile prices with RHA. And I asked them to just put together a short little package here of information. This is just since October 1st. So this is less than a month's worth of information. And, well, you know, my barometer is how many problems do I hear about, okay? You know how that works. And I haven't dealt with, you know, we had a discussion, Joe, about that. I think that got resolved. I can tell you, other than that, I have not had anything come across my desk in the way of a problem. I guess questions about services and things like that.
This particular service was basically, in our counties, a non-service. And after folks went to the well with the previous provider, and then the provider was taken over by a larger organization, after people went to the well 2 or 3 times and didn't really get any help, then they just went back to the way they've always done it, which is figure it out on their own. I think these numbers point out a very good decision and the fact that we're benefiting from it. And I suspect that those numbers will jump dramatically as the word gets out that it's working.
Yeah, that last page, the graph on the last page is, you know, we wanted to be sure that we increased access, and we accomplished that. And for a crisis service, I mean, you know, really, that's square one. So as we get deeper into it, of course, we want to look at the outcomes of people and things like that. And you know, what I thought was next month we'd do a little more in-depth thing, but wanted to give you a snapshot. You know, what I would do is send out to all the county managers, kind of, I guess, what would be the old Western board at send this.
Okay. And that's the only real issue that we had, when we all come face to face with each other, with RHA, Brian, Seth, Christine, and Nancy Baker. We all sat there. We all worked it out, talked about it. Then when we came back together again, come together with the meetings that were had from Brian's staff, with the 2 ladies that was handling the issue of the things going on at our hospital. It totally changed because they just walked in one day and said they won't be here. We might not be here again. But when they all come to the table and sat down and talked about it, it resolved itself immediately. And they're back doing what they were doing.
And I haven't heard anything, so I even put out a feeler. Things okay? Oh, sorry, I didn't get back to you. Yeah, couldn't be bad.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Right.
Making good progress.
You got 5 minutes. Don't
We
bite
have
that.
one last item, future board and executive meeting schedule.
November, because of Thanksgiving, what's the rotation need to be here? I you know, I don't think anybody believes it's a good idea to skip any meetings now. I just want to make sure people get a schedule they could live with. What would the normal date be, Joe?
The normal day, you're talking about what schedule?
Huh?
The next schedule is December 12th, because the schedule was laid out at the beginning of the year, don't have one in November. additional.
Okay.
But we need to meet in November, so
This year is happening.
For the record, November the 15th, our council will be meeting, there will be a conference call on Friday, probably
Okay.
this morning at 9:30.
So, for November,
What about the
what about the 21st?
right,
Thanksgiving's 28th,
right, so if we did the third Thursday, which would be the 21st, what does that look like?
Works for me.
We're still probably trying to hire a county manager, it don't matter.
You would do the same rotation, have a
What?
executive committee meeting at
What do you pay on
1.
your way, I might be,
We'll start you at 1:32, Chuck. You on in?
yeah, that's bad.
Okay.
I'll have to check.
One of these
Stays.
I could, but I wouldn't be able to bring my wife with me to try to.
So you're saying to have the same committee meetings,
No,
is everybody
just do
okay
it all
with
on
that?
the 21st.
21st, 1 o'clock?
Okay,
21st at 1 o'clock.
here,
Well,
Well,
I'll have
somewhere.
to check,
so,
because it's,
Yeah, I done found this place, don't change again.
see, space is a little tight, as you can see.
Any other business?
Everything's on hold.
We've got a finance committee at 3, everybody's welcome to attend.
No, they said all three minutes.
Oh, okay.
We'll have all 3 meetings.
We're going to meet at 1 o'clock this group, 1
Yes,
o'clock.
we're not sure where yet, but Jill will be out there. We'll see. We'll probably like to not be working out park, beating out parking lot. Any other
Everybody,
business?
everybody brings a potluck,
Yeah.
I think.
thank you.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
Make such a motion.
Okay, we have a motion, Dana made it, Judy seconded, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, it's time for the finish. Take 2 minutes, stretch your legs and come on.